Meet Alan Godfrey, a British police officer in the West Yorkshire Metropolitan Police Force. Alan, born and raised in this working-class neighborhood near the moors, is married and the father of 2 children. He has been commended twice for his investigative work in cases of sudden and mysterious deaths. Alan is proud to be a policeman and proud of his accomplishments. His story began 14 years ago, when Alan was looking for 3 men suspected of brutally assaulting someone the night before.
Headquarters, this is PC Godfrey. I've located the 3 suspects outside a pub. It's called the Carpenter Arms. I'm going to take them into custody. Send backup.
I was kicked in the groin area, as a result of which later on I did lose a testicle.
The police surgeon explained that Alan would require a long period of recuperation.
You're going to need a lot of rest.
He was both physically and psychologically devastated and was told he would no longer be able to have a normal sex life.
I was also told I would I've definitely been sterile for the rest of my life. I would not be able to father children again.
Alan finally returned to active duty. 3 years later, he was called to the scene of a mysterious death.
Looks like we got a murder on our hands.
Right, I'll call it in.
What was strange about the guy was he was wearing a top coat, but he wasn't wearing a shirt. He was wearing a string vest, you know. His jacket had been fastened unevenly at the top here. His trousers and the fly was undone on the trousers. His shoes appeared that he hadn't put them on himself. They hadn't been tied properly.
At 10 a.m., the body was not there, according to the owner of the coal yard. An off-duty officer had been present at 1:30 p.m. and found nothing unusual. Later that afternoon, the body was discovered, and subsequent tests proved he had been dead for at least 8 hours. So the question remained, where had he died? And how did he get to the top of the coal pile?
So this guy died of shock. Where the hell are these burn marks from?
There was a strange substance on the back of the dead man's neck, which the forensic pathologist proceeded to analyze.
The guy, although he died of a heart attack, the heart attack had been brought on by something that really, really terrified him.
The victim was identified as Zigmund Adamski.
The coroner wanted the police to ascertain why this guy had turned up some 30 or 40 miles from his home, where he'd been for 6 days, where the burn marks had come from. More importantly, what was the substance that had been applied to the guy's wound at the back of the neck? Because the substance could not be identified as anything known on Earth.
The police were further baffled. There were no footprints leading to where the body was found.
This is really important to remember this. The fact that the guy climbed a stack of coal, well, supposedly climbed a stack of coal, if he had got there under normal power, was suffering from a heart condition in inclement weather as it was, and to lie there on the top and just look at the sky and die is ridiculous.
But it wasn't just Alan Godfrey's supposed abduction that intrigued ufologists. The investigators also discovered a connection to another unsolved local mystery, one they believed could have extraterrestrial origins. 6 months before his UFO sighting, Alan Godfrey and colleague Malcolm Agley had received a call about a body found at a local coal yard.
I received a radio message that found a body at Todmorden railway station, so I attended with PC Alan Godfrey.
Also, instinctively tells you there's something not right. You know, you come across dead bodies all the time, it sounds like, but you do. He was lying on his back, just staring up into the sky.
There's no disturbance of the coal, you know, to say how he got there. You just can't explain it at all.
It was being treated as a crime scene. I think everybody at that stage thought it was a crime. That's how obvious it was. Why would a man climb a stack of coal, lie down on his back on top and die?
The body was that of a Polish emigre named Zigmund Adamski, a former miner who'd moved to the UK after the Second World War and had settled in Wakefield, 20 miles from where he was found.
To me, I don't think he died there. I think he'd been put there. It looked to me as if he had anyway.
The evidence was inconclusive.
You'd expect if somebody had been lying on the belly or climbed up the coal, it'd be covered in coal dust. It'd been raining, it'd stick to him like glue. There was no visual coal on him, on the front of him, anywhere, either on his face or anything. And he had these black marks that transpired to be burn marks round the back of the head, and there was one at the nape of the neck here, like an open wound, like a blistering wound, and it had had an ointment applied to it.
We just thought it was strange, you know, that he had these injuries and this sort of green ointment, which looked nothing I've seen before at all, you know. It just seemed strange and a bit unnatural, really.
Zigmund Adamski had gone missing after a shopping trip. There was no suggestion that he'd planned to disappear, and he was known as a loving family man with no obvious enemies. The autopsy confirmed that Adamski had died of a heart attack. Coroner James Turnbull was mystified, not least by the strange substance found on Adamski's burns.
We had the substance analysed, and the toxicologists and the scientists couldn't come up with any answers to what it was. And we came up against a blank at every line of investigation. This was one of the most puzzling cases that I've come across in 25 years. If somebody proved to me that UFOs exist and that there was one around there at that time, and that in some way we could associate it with this case, then perhaps I might say I'd only raise half an eyebrow.
Whatever the truth behind Adamski's death, which remains unsolved, Alan Godfrey's association with it was to turn him into a UFO celebrity. At the inquest, Coroner James Turnbull was mystified, recording an open verdict and even suggesting a link with UFOs.
I did nearly 27 years in the police, and it's the one thing that I've never really got to the bottom of, and it is bizarre, and it's always been there at the back of my mind. There's just no explanation for it at all.
Nobody has ever been charged in relation to the death of Zigmund Adamski, and the strange ointment which covered his burns has never been identified. The Adamski story was picked up by Sunday Mirror journalist John Sheard. Although more used to covering Northern Ireland and the trial of the Yorkshire Ripper, he recognised the opportunity for an exclusive.
I sat down and tried to write it as straight as I could. I didn't want it to sound over-sensational, because it was already a very sensational story. What I didn't know was that when it hit the streets that Sunday as the front page lead, was the incredible reaction that would happen. I'm talking about literally thousands of letters, hundreds of phone calls. I began to realise that this was a story that, even though I was still a bit iffy about it, had gripped millions of people throughout the world.
John Sheard soon discovered PC Alan Godfrey's involvement with the Adamski case, and the later claims made under hypnosis that he'd been the subject of an alien abduction.
I've been a journalist for 50 years and covered quite a few rather strange stories, but the Alan Godfrey story is undoubtedly the most astonishing thing I ever covered. What made Alan's story so special from my point of view was the fact that A, he was a serving policeman, and one expects them to be fairly straightforward in recording facts. And of course it came on the heels of the Adamski story and a very strange inquest. Individually, they were good pieces, but when you add the two together and a possible connection, you've got dynamite.
At the time, Alan Godfrey's story captured the public imagination. Whatever the truth behind it, it's become one of Britain's classic UFO cases.